We come now to another collection of Proverbs from Solomon. These were copied by the court of Hezekiah, which highlights his worthiness as one who prized the legendary wisdom of David's son. It also shows the literary activity of royal courts, which we have seen elsewhere, most recently in the book of Esther, where chronicles and annals and edicts were written. The other centre for literary activity would have been the temple. The first few proverbs are about the ideal king, as we have seen before, but these seem even more grand. Certainly the mind of the king as God's son should be filled with knowledge and always bent towards investigation, discerning truth or lies in cases brought to him and guessing at concealed motives. He is also the one, above all others, who should surround himself with wise counsellors and make good use of them. The proverb in verses 6 to 7 is presumably the background for the parable Jesus tells in Luke 14:7 to 11. A number of proverbs have a different style here. In verses 12 to 14 and 18 to 20, they begin with the word like and then describe some ordinary thing, which is either pleasant or unpleasant. The first three are pleasant and the following four unpleasant. Whichever it is sets you up to expect either a positive thing or person or behaviour or negative. Not knowing what is coming when you read the first line creates curiosity for what is coming in line 2, and perhaps also surprise. For example, in verse 18 we have like a war club, a sword or a sharp arrow, which being implements of terror and brutal death make you raise your eyebrows as you wonder what is coming next. It is surprising then when the comparison is revealed to be someone who lies in court about their neighbour. The intended effect is to make you ponder the severity of damage and perhaps even hostility involved in such actions. Great malicious harm can be done even with mere words. This proverb would disagree with our sticks and stones proverb. Another proverb here is known to us from the New Testament, and this one much more famous. It is verses 21 to 22, which Paul quotes in Romans 12:17 to 21. Although burning coals sound like a punishment, it is surely a metaphor for shame, which might lead to repentance. This positive intent is how Paul understood it, because after quoting it, he wrote, Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Chapter 25 has contained a number of positive proverbs, but chapter 26 is entirely negative. Many of them are about the fool, and some are also about the lazy person. The ones about the fool mostly use some image of something that does not fit or make sense or is contrary to nature to illustrate the wrongness, the frustration and calamity that being around a fool can generate. As mad and useless as it would be to have snow in summer, so it is to honour a fool. And, as verse 8 puts it, it is like binding a stone in a sling. That is, not just putting the stone into the pouch, but then tying it in there so it cannot come out. It is ridiculous. What is fitting for a fool, however, is beating him with a rod, as verse 3 states, which likens not just the naturalness of having the right tool for the job, for example, a bridle for the donkey, but also the fool to a dumb animal, which needs some implement to control it. Verses 4 and 5 are the notorious proverbs which, especially in how they are set beside each other, appear to flatly contradict each other. One way to tackle it, as the rabbis did, was to understand a difference in topic. One should ignore foolish talk unless the matter touched upon the Torah. Then one was required to answer. So verse 4 applies to general foolishness, but verse 5 applies to Torah. But this is probably a bit too easy. More likely is wisdom is not simple and requires building a fund of knowledge which can then be applied at the right time and in the right way. hence the wonderful imagery of 25:11, where a wise word spoken at the right time is like apples of gold in settings of silver. The sage, contending with a fool, has to decide whether to ignore him or engage. Chapter 17 warned that it was better to come across a bear robbed of her cubs than a fool in his folly. But on the other hand, verse 12 of chapter 26 points out the hopelessness of someone who is wise in their own eyes, someone who has no conception of their own ignorance. Is verse 5 meant to be positive for the fool, that in showing him his nonsense he might learn from it? But then he would not be a fool. Perhaps, like justice, which sometimes has to be done for its own sake, regardless of any other potential benefit, wisdom and truth have to be defended. But it is a tricky decision. The second half of the chapter, from verse 18 onwards, is again about the powerful negative effects of speech. The focus here is on deceptive speech, though it also contains gossips and whisperers who cause strife and quarrelling. Other proverbs warn about those who are flattering or smooth in their speech, but who hide evil intent. Verse 23 has the striking image of a pretty glazed pot or jar, which underneath is merely clay. So it is with some, the speech is pleasant, but the heart is evil. This inner reality of a person was, of course, a key theme of Jesus' teaching. Of course, as he warned, the evil thoughts of men would one day be exposed for all to see, but he also warned that by the fruit of a tree you will know whether it is good or bad. On 2 occasions in Matthew's Gospel, he spoke about how speech reveals what is really going on inside. In chapter 12 of Matthew's Gospel, 33 to 34, he says, "How can you speak good things when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person brings good things out of a good treasure, and the evil person brings evil things out of an evil treasure." And in chapter 15, verses 17 to 20, he says, "Do you not see that whatever goes into the mouth enters the stomach and goes out into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this is what defiles. For out of the heart come evil intentions, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile." So again, we see what a powerful witness our speech is to the inner condition of our hearts. It is a sobering reminder of the depth of the call of the gospel, which is that we might be transformed in our inner beings and not only our outward behavior to be like Jesus. But this is why God sent his Spirit.